Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
I'm Jason Miller. Tonight on the Evan-Miller Report, the Jordanian hostage that was being held by ISIS has been killed. But now we found out he may have been dead already for more than 30 days. We have the outrage of the Jordanian people. Plus, what is the U.S.'s response to this whole situation? We have the latest on that. Also tonight, French military aircraft are carrying out surveillance missions to help countries bordering Nigeria as they tackle Boko Haram militants. The president of Ukraine says there is no doubt that the U.S. will be providing arms in its war against the rebels from Russia. Australia's Prime Minister Tony Abbott has faced a growing backbench rebellion. We'll give you the latest out of Australia tonight. Plus, Venezuela's leader lashes out at Vice President Joe Biden amid a deepening crisis in his country as he thinks people are trying to take over his government. We have all those stories and more. Plus, Corey Evans.
Thank you, Jay. A Wyoming deputy retires after the sheriff says no Western attire on the job. Well, that's a fine howdy doody to y'all. New York City Mayor de Blasio's affordable housing plan meets resistance in our continuing battle against global socialism. There's a line out the door of folks wanting to buy out at least some of Radio Shack's stores. The PGA Tour's caddies are teed off in lawsuits across America. And we finally hear what happened to Scout Finch in book number 2 of the series. All that and more coming up in today's Evan-Miller Report, your conservative news source. Let's start now, Jay.
Yes, the Evan-Miller Report for this Tuesday, February the 3rd, 2015, does start right now.
Live from Southern California, this is the Evan-Miller Report. Jason Miller with news and politics, Corey Evan with business and entertainment. This is the Evan-Miller Report on SHR Media and Pundit Press Radio. Here now, Jason Miller.
And a very good evening. Again, as I said, on this Tuesday, February the 3rd, I'm Jason Miller, along with Corey Evan this evening. We have a lot of stuff to get to tonight, including tonight on the program, BP says their profits are going to be hit by lower prices as they cut spending on exploration. We have more on that story.
Looks like it's time for them to look beyond petroleum.
Absolutely. In global socialism tonight, ICE says transgender illegals have a guaranteed right to hormone therapy, and why is our taxpayer dollars paying for it? All that and much more on tonight's Evan-Miller Report for this Tuesday. But first, ladies and gentlemen, we start off, of course, with the big story of the day tonight. The family of Motheen Al-Qassi was overwhelmed with grief today after a video emerged approaching to show the Jordanian pilot that has been held hostage by ISIS for more than a month being killed. For more on this story, we're going to go to the ITV News' Dan Rivers.
His head bowed as the news he'd been dreading broke around the world. Safi Al-Qasasbeh was attending a tribal gathering when the appalling details emerged about how his son Moaf had been killed. Some of the Qasasbeh tribe were overwhelmed with grief on hearing about the gruesome video. But within a few hours, that grief was giving way to fury at the barbarity of his killing, and that the video named other Jordanian pilots menacingly giving their home addresses in an attempt to intimidate them. For Moaf Al-Qasasbeh's family, it brings to an end their agonizing wait in the most horrific way imaginable. The video, which confirmed their worst fears, was slickly produced with state-of-the-art graphics and a long preamble railing against King Abdullah's decision to involve Jordan in the anti-IS coalition. It shows Moaf Al-Qasasbeh with a black eye, looking at what appears to be a bomb site. He's watched by dozens of armed men, Western security services no doubt poring over every frame of this footage for clues about where and when it was filmed. What happens next is too graphic to show. Al-Qasasbeh is seen in a cage as a line of fuel is lit, which then engulfs him in flames. Tonight, Jordan's king described IS as cowards that have no relation to our noble religion in any way whatsoever, adding Moath Al-Qasasbeh's murder will only make us stronger. It didn't take long for his government to announce it would execute Sajida al-Rashawi, the female would-be suicide bomber, whose life IS had been seeking to trade with the Japanese journalist Kenji Goto. His family's hopes were crushed on Saturday when IS said he'd been beheaded. It underlined how unlikely a successful prisoner exchange was with a group which had shown so little mercy. Now we know IS's offer was in bad faith. Jordanian TV is reporting Moath Al-Qasasbeh's murder actually happened a month ago. The cynical release of the video today showing that for the last 31 days their attempted negotiations have been meaningless. His family cruelly kept waiting. In reality, there was no chance he'd ever come back. Dan Rivers, ITV News.
Thanks to Dan for his report. That's Dan Rivers from the ITV News over in London. And of course, we're going to have much more on this story throughout the night on the Sackheads radio show tonight, as always. First, we want to tell you how Washington is responding to this. The United States announced today that it will increase its annual aid to Jordan to $1 billion from $660 million to help it pay for the cost of housing refugees from Iraq and Syria and to fight ISIS. Obama praised the Jordanian President praised the Qassaband for his bravery and said he was in the vanguard of effort to be degraded and defeat the threat posed by militants from Islamic State. Today, he said, quote, "Today the coalition fights for everyone who has suffered from ISIL's humanity." And this is direct quote from Obama, so take it from with what it's worth. Obama also continued saying that he added that the group's hateful ideology will be banished to the recesses of history. And ladies and gentlemen, just stay with SHR Media Network for the latest on this story. The Sackheads radio show will be discussing this further at length on their program tonight, special Tuesday program edition tonight at 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific, right here on SHR, so we hope you stay tuned for those reports. Meanwhile, we move over tonight over to the African nations tonight, where the French military are carrying out surveillance missions to help countries bordering Nigeria tackle Boko Haram militants. Officials said on Tuesday amid efforts by African countries to coordinate a response to the threat posed by the group. The African Union has authorized a force of 7,500 groups from Nigeria, Chad, Cameroon, Niger, and Benin to fight the militants. It is expected to seek a United Nations Security Council mandate, which could also include logistical support from other countries. Our Air Force is carrying out reconnaissance missions, but not over Nigeria, said a French Defense Ministry source. Our support is limited to neighboring countries such as Chad and Niger. The source added that added intelligence was being given to Chadian forces currently fighting Boko Haram on the Cameroon and Nigerian border region. Moved on to Ukraine tonight, where their president Petro Poroshenko said today he has no doubt that the U.S. will be providing weapons for the fight against pro-Russian separatists, after Washington signaled it may be ready for the risky move. I have no doubt that a decision on the possible delivery of arms to Ukraine will be approved both by the United States and by our other partners, Poroshenko said. He continues saying we have the means to defend ourselves when he was speaking to journalists in the eastern city of Kharkov after at least 19 civilians and 5 government troops were killed in fighting with pro-Russian rebels over the previous 24 hours. As we reported yesterday on the program, ladies and gentlemen, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry will be flying into Ukraine on Thursday in a show of support for the country's pro-Western leadership as hopes grow in Kiev that long-standing demands or the U.S. to supply arms that could be met. All right, over to Australia now, where the Prime Minister, Tony Abbott, is facing a growing backlash rebellion, with 3 MPs calling for a vote on his leadership. One Liberal MP, Dennis Jensen, has publicly called on the Prime Minister to step down. Questions over Mr. Abbott's leadership have grown amid a popularity slump and a shock defeat for his Liberal National Coalition in the Queensland elections. He has called for calm, saying his government needs to get back to work. Foreign Minister Julie Bishop has been suggested as a possible challenger, although she has told fellow cabinet members she is not campaigning for the job of Prime Minister. Communications Minister Malcolm Turnbull has also suggested a possible rival alongside Social Services Minister Scott Morrison. On Tuesday, Mr. Jensen called for Mr. Abbott to be replaced as soon as possible, according to the Australian Broadcasting Corporation news service. He said the government policy was not consistent and coherent and that there was no strategic direction. Queensland MP Warren, instance, said he wanted to see a resolution to the leadership issue at a party meeting next week. And of course, we'll keep you up to date what's going on in Australia as developments continue to come into us. Over to Canada, where their Foreign Minister John Barnard has resigned as Canada's top diplomat. Mr. Barnard, who has served multiple positions to Prime Minister Stephen Harper's cabinet, is also not expected to run for re-election as an MP. I will miss this place very much, Mr. Barnard said in a speech to Parliament. The time has come to start a new chapter in my life. The announcement comes as Egyptian-Canadian journalist Mohamed Fahmy is expected to be released from prison. Mr. Barnard, who has worked to free Mr. Fahmy, said on Monday the Al Jazeera journalist's release was imminent. Canada's Prime Minister Stephen Harper said in a statement, Mr. Barnard was one of the finest ministers I've had the privilege of working with. Johnson has always been willing to do a lot of heavy lifting in my various cabinets and has assumed the daunting new responsibilities with usurped authority. With usurped energy, commitment, and professionalism, misread there. Never losing sight of the fact that he was serving the Canadian people. An unnamed Canadian official told the AP that the Foreign Minister has simply decided it was the right time to resign. All right, folks, I'll have more in a couple minutes on why the Venezuelan leader is lashing out against Vice President Joe Biden. But first, we send it over to Corey Evan up in Los Angeles. He has some of the day's other news. Corey, take it away.
A lot going on in the world today. Wow. To think back home in the U.S., the new sheriff of a Wyoming county has banned his deputies from wearing cowboy hats and cowboy boots, a change that led one longtime deputy to retire rather than give up his Western attire, according to the AP. Sublette County Sheriff Stephen Haskell imposed the new dress code in the western Wyoming county that includes Pinedale, which True West magazine recently named a true western town. Ironic. Haskell is requiring deputies to wear black trousers, a tan shirt, black boots, and a black ball cap, saying the change is for safety and uniformity. Quote, I'm very much for the Western way of life and the look, and that's the way I dress, Haskell told the Casper Star Tribune. However, for a professional outfit, I'd like everybody to look the same. We are one team unified in one purpose. That is to do our job, unquote. So what if you all look the same? Each one of you does the job slightly differently, I imagine. Any rate, Haskell, who has worked in law enforcement for 3 years, also argues that cowboy boots are slippery on ice, and cowboy hats can blow away in Wyoming's blustery wind. I honestly doubt that, but at any rate, the change led Deputy Gene Bryson to retire last Friday after 28 years with the department and about 40 years total in law enforcement. His uniform included a brown cowboy hat, brown cowboy boots, and a leather vest in the summer, or a wool vest in the winter. The uniform change is, quote, kind of the reason why I retired, Bryson told the newspaper. I'm not going to change. I've been here for 40-odd years in the sheriff's office, and I'm not going to go out and buy combat boots and throw my vest and hat away and say, this is the new me, unquote. Bryson was born and raised on a ranch in Montana and has worked on ranches in Colorado and Wyoming. He went into law enforcement in 1974. 40 years in law enforcement. That is a dedicated long time, Mr. Bryson. So I don't blame you for going out on top. like that. And honestly, I wouldn't expect any law enforcement officer to change into a new uniform without some sort of resistance, so I don't blame you guys. Nia Jenkins, the girlfriend of Odin Lloyd, the man Hernandez allegedly orchestrated the murder of in June 2013, on the day after Lloyd was found dead, Jenkins testified Tuesday afternoon. Shania Jenkins offered her account of the interaction in Bristol County Superior Court, telling jurors that she went to Hernandez's house to visit her sister, Cheyenne, who was engaged to Hernandez and the mother of his daughter, Eviel. Shania told jurors that Hernandez consoled her in the dining room, rubbing her shoulder, and told her he had been through this death thing before, it will get better with time, unquote. Hernandez went upstairs then and left the house for an undisclosed location soon after. Shania stayed in the living room with her sister, niece, and uncle. Shania noted that her sister answered her phone multiple times, but that her answers with the unknown caller or callers were very short. She also added that Cheyenne was very close with her, but that Cheyenne's behavior was not normal and secretive, as Cheyenne typed out text messages and retrieved a garbage bag before descending downstairs to the basement. Cheyenne Jenkins is facing perjury charges in the case for allegedly lying to a grand jury about her role as possibly disposing of the murder weapon, which was never retrieved by investigators. Cheyenne then borrowed Shania's car to go to the bank to get money for housekeepers, according to Shania. Just yet another layer in this stinking onion, which we call the Aaron Hernandez trial.
Ugh.
Yeah, I know.
Why does it seem for it's almost going on for the past 7 years, the murder rate has gone up in the United States? Do I just sense a bad apple of global socialism coming up?
I think you do, and we'll get to that later. But it's worth noting that, of course, the Patriots cut Hernandez immediately after his arrest, so thankfully, Mr. Hernandez doesn't have a stake in this past weekend's Super Bowl. Whew! And a pilot taking selfies in the cockpit likely contributed to the crash of a small plane that killed him and his passenger last year near Denver. Federal accident investigators concluded in a new report brought to us by ABC News. The National Transportation Safety Board released their full probable cause report about the May 31st, 2014 crash, and said that the evidence from the scene, including a GoPro camera with videos from recent flights, showed that the distraction of the pilot could have caused the crash. This comes 2 months after the FAA fielded questions over the safety of pilots taking pictures mid-flight after photos started flooding Instagram from the cockpits of private and commercial flights. The NTSB report about the Colorado crash describes the two-seat Cessna 150 taking off just after midnight on May 31st, crashing about 4 minutes later. Family members identified the pilot as Amritpal Singh, age 29. Singh's family told ABC affiliate KMGH that the other victim was a musician in town for a concert at a local high school, and that Singh was giving airplane rides to some of the people in town for the concert. NTSB investigators said they found a GoPro camera near the wreckage. Though the GoPro didn't record the crash itself, the report says the recordings revealed that the pilot and various passengers were taking selfies with their cell phones and during the night flight using the camera's flash function during the takeoff roll, initial climb, and flight in the traffic pattern. The report said investigators did not find anything wrong with the plane itself, and say the evidence suggests the plane was not going fast enough to maintain lift before spinning out of control and crashing. The report includes descriptions of 7 videos recorded on the GoPro that was found near the wreckage, and even though they are believed to have been filmed in flights leading up to the crash, but not that specific flight, the investigators believe the pilot could have been taking similar liberties in the air. Disgusting to think that pilots are actually taking selfies while they're flying the plane, or at least trying to. It's a bit like trying to read the newspaper and trying to drive a car at the same time, isn't it, Jay?
Stupid!
I know! And if it weren't for them being dead, I'd put them on the idiot of the day list, but honestly, it's been too long since the actual crash. But it is worth noting because this is the NTS.
I got a perfect
Where's that?
place for That's on the IDR.
The IDR?
The impossible driving route.
Yeah! That's about right. And I think we should make that another regular segment on the show, or semi-regular. And if you'd mind writing that down, because I seem to have misplaced my pen.
Pen
Here it is. Well, keep a note on your side as well.
Certainly will.
And I'll send it over to you, Jay. What else you got?
All right, folks. Well,
we're both asking the same question.
yes, we do. We certainly are asking the same questions tonight. Well, we go over to Venezuela, where Joe Biden may have his foot in his mouth, may not have his foot in his mouth. Well, we'll tell you here in the next story. As Venezuela's economic crisis deepens, President Nicolas Maduro has stepped up accusations of plots against his leftist government, lashing out most recently at U.S. Vice President Joe Biden. Just 10 days ago, Maduro had finally referred to Biden as a comrade. But this past Sunday, the Venezuelan leader was livid, like a hornet going up in Corey Evans' car and blowing up his airbags. Isn't that right, Cor?
Hands off my car. I already have gone through one accident in the past year. I don't need to be in another.
Enough said. At a rally with several thousand supporters, Maduro angrily accused Biden of going behind his back in talks with regional leaders to announce the overthrow of my government. According to State Department spokeswoman and BS artist Jan Pizecki, she said the allegations were baseless and false in an attempt to distract from what's taking place inside the country. The Venezuelan government should focus on the legitimate grievances of its people, which include repeated violations of the freedom of speech and assembly as well as due process under the law, she said. She also announced that the United States had imposed visa restrictions on more current and former Venezuelan officials who had deemed to be engaged in human rights abuses, as we reported yesterday on this program. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and take our first ad break here at this time. But when we come back tonight, in the business news, the International Monetary Fund has agreed to make loans of around $700 million to Kenya. We'll tell you why. Also, the European Commission has widened its corporate tax program to include Belgium's rules on so-called excess profits. Well, that in international business, plus Korea has what's going on here in U.S. business.
I think we've got a theme going in the EU's attempts to tax that sort of excess profit. But at any rate, mergers help push stock markets higher today. One thing's for sure, it'll make life easier not having to choose Office Depot or Staples. Although I prefer Office Depot, so that's going to be up in the air. There's a line out the door of companies wanting to buy Radio Shack, or at least some of their stores. I wonder who's going to buy them. And is Chipotle stock too hot to handle? We find out in Business Report as well. Plus, caddies are suing the PGA Tour over using their likenesses. Uh-oh, they're teed off. And with that, we go to the break on the Evan-Miller Report. You're listening to SHR Media. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Evan-Miller Report on SHR Media and Pundit Press Radio.
Radio.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Sean and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on the Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Hello, I'm Paul, a student at Hillsdale College.
Here is my professor, Dr. Larry Arnn, on the separation of church and state.
America's founders believed in the separation of church and state, in that the country was not to have an official religion or an official sect. But that did not mean that government was to be hostile to religion, or even indifferent to religion, as many today argue. In fact, America's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, includes both a reference to God as the author of the laws of nature and a confident assertion that human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Far from being hostile or indifferent to religion, America's founders understood the theology of the Declaration to be an essential part of the education of citizens.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
Hi, this is Rooster from Outcry Radio. Catch me here on Blog Talk Radio every Saturday night at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or follow my blog. Now, back to the Sackheads.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Are you looking for conservative opinion without all the GOP BS? Listen to the Sackheads radio show tonight, coming up after the Exceptional Conservative Show, 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific, right here on the SHR Media Network.
St. Jude is leading the way childhood cancer is treated and defeated in communities across America.
And no family receives a bill from St. Jude, not for treatment, travel, housing, or food.
So parents at St. Jude can focus on what matters most, helping their child live.
Give thanks.
Give thanks.
Give thanks for the healthy kids in your life and give to those who are not. Go to stjude.org or shop wherever you see the St. Jude logo.
Let's get back to the Evan-Miller Report on SHR Media and Pundit Press Radio.
And welcome back to the Evan-Miller Report. I'm Jason Miller. We have some international business news today, so I'll be starting off with the business news. Corey Evan will be back in Los Angeles with the U.S.-based business news in just a couple minutes. The International Monetary Fund has agreed to make loans of around $700 million available to Kenya. The money will be used as an insurance policy to protect against any threats to the country's economy, considered a financial powerhouse in East Africa. The Kenyan government requested the package only as a precautionary measure in case of an emergency such as a natural disaster or militant attack. The funds will be available for the next 12 months. Over to the EU, where the European Commission has widened its corporate tax probe to include Belgium's rules on so-called excess profit. It is the latest European Union member state to have its tax regime put under the spotlight. The Commission is investigating whether the tax regimes of certain EU nations amounts to state aid. It said Belgium often made tax deals with firms that moved a substantial part of their business to the country. U.S. corporations, including Apple, Starbucks, and Amazon, have also been caught up in the investigation for what the Commission calls their aggressive tax planning strategies. And Corey Evan will have more on Amazon in a couple minutes in the U.S.-based business news. BP has reported lower profits and says it will cut spending on exploration because of the fall of oil prices. Underlying profits in the final 3 months of 2014 were down 20% on a year earlier at $2.2 billion. For the full year, profits fell 10% to $12.1 billion. The oil giant also said it would be cutting capital expenditure plans by $4 to $6 billion this year. BP's share price is down 16% since last summer due to lower oil prices, which have fallen 50% in the past 6 months. Separately, fellow UK energy company BG Group said it was writing down assets worth more than $6 billion due to weaker oil prices. And now we'll go over to Corey Evan over in Los Angeles, and he has tonight's U.S. business news. Corey, take it away.
The Dow was up 305 points, Jay, at 17 666, so who knows if tomorrow's going to be any better. But at any rate, the Nasdaq was up 51 points at 4727, and the S&P 500 up 29 points at 2050. U.S. stocks jumped more than 1% today, led by energy shares as oil prices extended their recent rally, while higher than expected January car sales also bolstered the advance. Merger activity also helped, with shares of Office Depot jumping 21.6% to $9.28 after the Wall Street Journal reported the retailer was in advanced talks to merge with Staples. Staples shares gained 10.9% at $19.01. The S&P gained 2.8% over 2 sessions as the bounce back in oil prices and hopes of a Greek debt deal eased some concerns about the global economy, but the index has been locked in a trading range of 1972 to 2093 since mid-December and is nearly flat since December 31st. Credit rating firm Standard & Poor's will pay $1.5 billion to resolve a collection of lawsuits over its ratings on mortgage securities that soured in the run-up to the 2008 financial crisis, concluding one of the U.S. government's most ambitious cases tied to the housing collapse. This from Reuters. The settlement comes after more than 2 years of litigation as S&P tried to beat back allegations that it issued overly rosy ratings in order to win more business. S&P parent McGraw-Hill Financial said it'll pay $687 million to the U.S. Department of Justice and $687 million to 19 states and D.C., which have filed similar lawsuits over the ratings. Late Monday, the firm reached a separate $125 million settlement with public pension fund California Public Employees Retirement System, or CalPERS as it's known, which had sued S&P in 2009, claiming its inaccurate ratings caused the firm hundreds of millions of dollars in losses. The U.S. sued S&P in 2013 after initial settlement talks broke down, seeking $5 billion and accusing the ratings agency of defrauding investors. S&P argued that its ratings were protected under the First Amendment right to free speech and described the lawsuit as retaliation for the firm downgrading the credit rating of the U.S. Next up, Amazon has entered into talks with the struggling Radio Shack Corporation concerning the purchase of several of the electronic retailer store locations, pending the company's expected bankruptcy filing. If the deal goes through, the brick-and-mortar stores could be used by Amazon to display products or as pick-up and drop-off centers for items purchased and sold through the company's online marketplace. As explained by Bloomberg Business, the move represents Amazon's push to enter the traditional retail sector and compete with Apple, which has more than 400 locations worldwide. But Amazon's not the only company eyeing Radio Shack. Sprint's discussed moving into some of the 4,000 Radio Shack stores and even co-branding the locations, while the investment group behind Brookstone has been identified as another potential bidder. While Radio Shack has not yet officially declared bankruptcy, the company has posted losses for the past 2 years and lost 90% of its value in the last year. And yesterday, as I mentioned, the New York Stock Exchange halted trading of Radio Shack stocks due to the company's financial decline. And finally, Chipotle Mexican Grill might be a victim of its own massive growth. The fast casual food retail restaurants, added 192 new restaurants last year and is a cash cow from a business perspective with over $4 billion in revenue. But investors weren't happy Tuesday with the company's latest earnings report. Chipotle's stock slipped over 5% in after-hours trading after news broke that its sales jumped only 26%. Oh, come on. Just take what you can get, stock traders. Anyway,
they're just complaining because they ate too much hot sauce and they got heartburn.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is, Jay. Thanks for pointing that out. Most restaurant chains, including its former mentor McDonald's, would love to have anything close to that, but Chipotle has set a higher standard for fast casual in its stores and for its investors. One of the problems may be that Chipotle temporarily took pork out of 500 of its stores last month because of a quality issue with one of its suppliers, which may help explain investors' disappointment. The January hit on pork cost them $2 million, the company said on a call with analysts. Higher food prices are also affecting Chipotle's bottom line. Food costs rose a hefty 35% last quarter as certain meat prices are at historic highs. But customers can rejoice. Chipotle isn't planning any price increases across its menu for now. Despite a few scratches, Chipotle had an impressive year and plans to open an additional 200 stores this year. I can't talk all of a sudden. It also predicted continued sales growth, although not quite the double-digit gains from last year. But nonetheless, Chipotle is still an amazing little place to go for an amazing burrito. They cost a little bit more than your traditional bean and cheese with rice, but at the same time, you can pretty much never go wrong with Chipotle, right, Jay?
Oh, no. I actually had a burrito on our Election Night in America coverage last November. The Sackheads brought one. That thing was huge. Love that burrito. And so...
You see exactly what people love about them? You can put just about anything in a Chipotle burrito, and it tastes absolutely amazing. They've got high quality standards, and it shows in their product.
Yeah, certainly does. So, and not to say, ladies and gentlemen, we're not endorsing these companies, but we will say that it may be part of Corey's new segment called the Foodie Fruity segment coming up on the SHR Weekender.
Ah, yes, I'll be planning that one out, and I'll bring that to you in a future SHR Weekender. But in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, I'm looking for the classifieds for this week's SHR Weekender. So, if you spot an amazingly funny or just otherwise wrong want ad on the job boards, in the newspaper, or online, grab a pic of it and send it to me at facebook.com/SHR Weekender, and I'll see you this weekend. And now it's time to head straight into our continuing battle against global socialism. A federal appeals court today cleared the way for same-sex marriages to begin Monday in Alabama, but the state's attorney general made a last-ditch attempt to keep the weddings on hold. This from ABC News. The three-judge panel of the 11th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals today refused to delay a district judge's decision that overturned Alabama's gay marriage bans. That would appear to pave the way for Alabama to become the 37th state where gays can legally wed. However, Attorney General Luther Strange asked the U.S. Supreme Court to halt the weddings until the justices settle the issue nationwide when they take up gay marriage later this year. The Attorney General predicted there will be an unnecessary confusion next week among local officials who issue marriage licenses absent a stay. The U.S. Supreme Court will hear oral arguments in April and is expected to issue a ruling by June regarding whether gay couples nationwide have a fundamental right to marry and whether states can ban such unions. Yeah, that doesn't exactly make me happy, knowing that there's a chance that they may say, yes, it's a fundamental right, which, you know me, I'm a religious guy. I know that these things can have repercussions on folks who support traditional marriage. But at any rate, moving on to our next item, Kentucky Senator Rand Paul said Monday that while he's a big fan of vaccinations, he does not support the idea that the government should force individuals to be vaccinated. This coming from The Blaze. His statement, alongside those of New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, saying parents should have a say in the matter, have infuriated some who believe vaccines should be mandatory. Glenn Beck on Tuesday came to Dr. Paul's defense, saying that while he too supports vaccines, he does not support government-mandated injections. Beck reminded those attempting to turn the matter into a political issue that President Obama had largely the same stance in 2008. Beck asked why the left is seemingly attempting to isolate and destroy political opponents on an issue we can all agree on, saying nobody wants a measles outbreak and everyone can agree that you can refuse to vaccinate your children, but businesses and schools can then refuse to accept them. Very interesting argument there, but I say that if kids are having allergic reactions to these vaccinations, then I say that the manufacturers, the drug companies who make the vaccines, should look at the formula and see if they can find a way to eliminate whatever's causing these reactions.
Well, you know,
maybe then they'll see a little bit more support. But Jay, you had something to say?
Corey, in my general opinion, anything that the federal government puts their hands into, it never goes right. We look at the same thing happens with the flu shot. The AIDS virus, they still don't go right. You always have something wrong with them. We've had bad flu shot strains, and that's why I don't trust myself to get a flu shot from a doctor's office each year, because anything that's made by the government or put in by the government, there's always going to be problems. It's never going to be done the right way.
And to think that this year the flu
with government health care.
And why do you think that the flu shot's only about 23% effective against the the flu this year. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens when the government institutionalizes medicine like this. Private and enterprise will always be better than public options. And speaking of public options, every month city planners come to East New York to explain how the city wants to help a corner of Brooklyn scarred by decades of poverty and violent crime to grow. They'll invite developers to build up local streets in exchange for more units of affordable housing. They'll invest in new trees and sidewalks. Better services and shops will follow, they say. And every month, the grumbling ensues. One of the first neighborhoods of Mayor Bill de Blasio's administration choice to focus on under his affordable housing strategy, one of his chief policy initiatives, which he made the centerpiece of his State of the City address on Tuesday. They call it gentrifying and more expensive for the poor, which pretty much it is. And what was that you were saying, Jake?
All I call that is it's called chop the block.
Yes, that's pretty much right. Around New York, people who have watched luxury buildings and wealthy newcomers remake their streets are balking at the growth Mr. de Blasio envisioned, saying the influx of market-rate apartments called for in the city's plans could gut neighborhoods, not preserve them. Sound about right, Jay?
See? I didn't even have to read that story, and I automatically knew what this guy was up to. See, this de Blasio, he's not looking out for you, ladies and gentlemen.
He's just looking to pad his wallet. That's what he's doing.
He's loading it up with the cash. That's why he's a
all
cash
at the
cow.
expense of the ever-suffering taxpayer.
Yes, and that's why he is our fat cow today in today's global socialism. Stuff yourself full of cash. Our cash, shame on you.
Yes. Makes me want to go have a filet mignon after the show just to get my own back on him. But at any rate, you've got a couple of items in global socialism as well.
Say is, get me a pinball hammer.
Yes, and Jay, I'll let you take a whack at it.
Thank you very much, Corey. Speak of which, MPs over in the UK have voted in favor of the creation of babies with DNA from 2 women and 1 man. In an historic move, the UK is now set to become the first country to introduce laws to allow the creation of babies from 3 people. In a free vote in the Commons, 382 MPs were in favor and 128 against the technique that stops genetic diseases being passed from mother to child. During the debate, ministers said the technique was the light at the end of a dark tunnel for families. A further vote is required in the House of Lords. If everything goes ahead, then the first such baby could be born next year. Proponents say the backing was good news for progressive medicine, which Corey and I have already put our full opinions on what progressive medicine is. But critics say they will continue to fight against the technique they say raises too much ethical and safety concerns. Estimates suggest that 153-person babies could be born each year. Prime Minister David Cameron's opinion was, we're not playing God here, we're just making sure that 2 parents who want a healthy baby can have one. Well, Mr. Cameron, I happen to disagree with you, just like I disagree with stem cell research when it was started here in the U.S. All right, back to some global socialism news here at home. During a recent discussion on immigration detention facilities, Kevin Laddie, the assistant director of the ICE Office of Detention Policy and Planning, said that transgender individuals are guaranteed a right to hormone therapy while in custody. With respect to treatment while in detention, the medical care standard, the standard guarantees a right to hormone therapy for individuals who need it for treatment and even in facilities that are not covered by that standard. He continued saying, quote, our ICE House Services Corps is very vigilant on that issue to ensuring that individuals receive necessary hormone therapy. Transgender detainees who have already been receiving hormone therapy when taken into ICE custody should have continued access. All transgender detainees have access to medical health care and other transgender-related health care and medication based on a medical need, he said. He continued saying, treatment shall follow accepted guidelines regarding medically necessary trans-related care. The ICE Operations Manual for Performance-Based National Detention Standards. which is ICE's operation manual for its detention facilities across the United States. Well, Corey, first they're going to be giving them hormone therapy, these illegal immigrants in prison. Next, they'll be getting sex changes. And then, after that, oh boy, guess what we're going to be paying for? Their bras over at Victoria's Secret.
Oh, you just had to bring them into it, didn't you? Doesn't it all just add up to more lingerie sales? And now, ladies and gentlemen, particularly the gentlemen, now you have to be even more aware of whether your future eternal companion is a she-male.
Ooh.
So, how soon will parents... I'm sorry?
Okay, I think on that note, we better just wrap this segment up.
Yeah, I was referencing Al Yankovic there. I'll send you that song later.
Yeah.
So, how soon will parents of kids with MMR vaccine allergies gain some pushback? Why is the Housing and Urban Development backing these destructive housing plans in New York? And why haven't I seen a video of Daffy Duck taking the purple pill? I've seen red and blue, but why not purple? Stay tuned for developments in our continuing battle against global socialism.
On that note, folks, I think we're going to go take a break, take a drop of water to wash down all this global socialism nonsense. But when we come back, Corey Evan tonight's Lawsuits Across America, the Entertainment Report. We'll be back in 60 seconds.
In a moment, cancer changed our lives forever.
We were told nothing could be done to enjoy these final moments together.
But in that moment, when all seemed lost, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital gave us hope.
Because at this moment, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital is saving lives with pioneering research and care. We're changing the way the world treats childhood cancer by sharing our discoveries with doctors and scientists everywhere.
And we'll never have to pay St. Jude for anything, ever.
At this moment, she wants to be in her own bed.
I want to be back at school with my friends. I want to be outside playing.
Please take a moment and join St. Jude in finding cures and saving children. Visit stjude.org.
And now it's time for Lawsuits Across America. The cases are real. All rise for the Honorable Corey Evans.
Thank you as always, Pat. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated and come to order. Lawsuits Across America is now in session, and bye! That's just so you don't get a golf ball. Professional golf caddies have filed a class action antitrust lawsuit against the PGA Tour, alleging improper use of the caddies' likenesses and images. This from CBS Sports. The suit, similar to the landmark O'Bannon versus NCAA action, seeks access to what it says is a revenue stream worth $50 million annually from caddies wearing of traditional bibs adorned with sponsors' logos. The caddies are required to display those sponsors' logos controlled by the tour that derives revenue from them. The suit was filed Tuesday in the same U.S. Northern District Court of California that was home to the O'Bannon class action suit versus the NCAA, involving college athletes. The caddies suit states that the tour denied them to profit from sponsors' logos worn on bibs that are required by PGA without compensation. The plaintiffs, 82 current and from 19 U.S. states and 1 Canadian province, says the sponsorship value of the bibs is worth $50 million. The suit seeks unspecified actual damages and royalties attributable to the tour's use of the caddies' likeness and images in commercial activities. The caddies' suit is similar to O'Bannon in that it raises the same image and likeness issue. A district judge in August ruled that schools cannot cap the value of a football or men's basketball scholarship below the actual cost of attendance. It also ruled schools can create a trust fund up to $5,000 per school year in exchange for their names, images, and likeness. Next up from Dispatch.com, the family of an Ohio inmate whose troubling execution more than a year ago led to an unofficial moratorium on capital punishment in the state is dropping their civil rights lawsuit. Yes! The adult children of executed inmate Dennis McGuire, who snorted and gasped when put to death with a never-tried two-drug combo, asked a federal judge Monday to dismiss the lawsuit filed against the state and an Illinois drug maker. The lawsuit said McGuire suffered needless pain and suffering during his January 2014 execution using a sedative, midazolam, and a painkiller, hydromorphone. A nearly 2-hour execution in Arizona in July deepened concerns about the same two-drug method. There are 2 drugs in there, that's what I'm saying. The state prisons agency announced last month it was dropping the method in favor of alternative anesthetics when it currently doesn't have. That decision satisfied the goals of McGuire's family, eliminated the need to pursue the lawsuit, said attorney John Paul Ryan. The state attorney general's office, which represented the prisons agency, declined comment. The drug maker, Lake Forest, Illinois-based Hospira, did not return messages seeking comment. McGuire was executed for the 1989 rape and stabbing death of Joy Stewart, a recently married pregnant woman in western Ohio. So on that note, that's why I say yes, they finally gave up, because I imagine somewhere deep down they know that, honestly, the suffering that Mr. McGuire suffered when he was executed, I think at least was somewhat rightly so, because when you take the life of someone, the law requires your life. That's my take on it. But I digress, ladies and gentlemen, from bringing my morals into this. But at the same time, I do bring my background to this one. From the AP, children's advocacy groups sued the state of Arizona today, claiming it violated the civil rights of nearly 17,000 children in its foster care system by exposing them to possible harm. Oh dear. The suit filed in U.S. District Court in Phoenix said the state fails to provide needed mental and other health care and enough foster homes to house children removed from their families. The suit also accuses the state of failing to investigate reports of maltreatment in existing foster homes and not providing basic services that reunite children with their families. The suit was filed on behalf of 10 foster kids and seeks class action. The children are represented by the national advocacy group Children's Rights, the Arizona Center law firm in the public interest, and a Phoenix law firm. The legal action came after Arizona did a massive overhaul of its child welfare system last year in the wake of revelations that the overburdened Child Protective Services Agency had failed to investigate thousands of abuse and neglect reports phoned into a state hotline. The overhaul removed CPS from its former parent agency and created a new standalone Department of Children's Safety. Ann Ronan, an attorney with the Arizona Center for Law in the Public Interest, said those reforms did nothing to address the problems faced by children in foster care. The suit names the head of Arizona's Child Welfare and Health Services agencies as defendants. A spokeswoman for the Department of Children's Safety said her agency doesn't comment on litigation. A Health Services Department spokeswoman had no immediate comment. Representative Kate Brophy-McGee of Phoenix said she's not surprised by the allegations. Quote, I think we're still digging our way out from the cuts from prior years, and we have yet, in my mind, to implement the supports that need to be there. That's what she said anyway. The number of children in foster care has soared in recent years. In March 2010, there were 10,200 children in state care, and by September 2013, there were more than 15,000. So I can sympathize with a lot of them. I can understand that the states do need to reevaluate their programs year after year to make sure that they're using their resources to the best that they can, because honestly, I know, having been a foster kid myself, that those resources are quite limited. But I will keep an eye on this one, specifically because of where I stand on it, and I'll bring you details as they become available. But otherwise, I have no more comment. That is case dismissed for today's Lawsuits Across America. Sorry to bring my history into it, but I can clearly say that I sympathize with these kids, having been there, done that.
I think it's quite okay you bring in your opinion in. You have experience on the issue. It's always good with someone with experience to talk about the issue. So
yeah, and some kids who have grown up in foster care may be embarrassed to reveal that they were in there, but I wave it like a banner because when I've been there and done that, I can pass my experience on to others who are going through the same thing. So if you've been in foster care, don't be embarrassed about it. You're not alone.
Well said, Corey. Well said. All right, what you got over in the entertainment department today? What's cooking?
I've got a good one. Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird has remained one of the most beloved books of the past 5 decades, and now the author will have the opportunity to revisit that singular success with Ghost at a Watchman, a sequel to the classic 1960 novel. The new book will be published by Harper, an imprint of HarperCollins Publishers, on July 14th. Watchmen was originally written before Mockingbird and features many of the characters from To Kill a Mockingbird some 20 years later. Scout Finch has returned to Macomb from New York to visit her father Atticus. She's forced to grapple with issues both personal and political. Oh dear. It fits in today's society, as she tries to understand her father's attitude towards said society and her own feelings about the place where she was born and spent her childhood. The deal was negotiated by Michael Morrison, president and publisher of HarperCollins U.S. General Books Group and Canada, via Harper Lee's lawyer, Tanya Carter. And an update on an entertainment story I brought you yesterday. Suge Knight was rushed to the hospital after appearing in LA County Superior Court today. Meanwhile, shots were heard several blocks away from the courthouse, though a call reporting sounds of gunfire was not received until 10:12 a.m. Quote, it had nothing to do with the courthouse, according to one reporter. Knight pleaded not guilty early Tuesday to murder, attempted murder, and hit-and-run charges during a brief court appearance. If convicted, the rap artist faces up to life in state prison. Felicity Jones has been tapped to take on the leading role in the Star Wars standalone film. The Oscar-nominated actress is now in talks for the project, according to The Hollywood Reporter. Other actresses who were reportedly considered for the role included Rooney Mara and Tatiana Maslany. The film is being directed by Gareth Edwards of Godzilla, and Chris Weitz was recently hired to write a new draft of the script, The Hollywood Reporter reports. Plus, details of the spinoff are being kept under wraps, but it does have a December 2016 release date. Chronicle director Josh Trank is also helming another planned standalone film set in the Star Wars universe. It's unclear as of yet how these films will factor into the Star Wars The Force Awakens, if at all. Fans will get to see that film when it hits theaters this December 18th. Quite an interesting report we got today, and I hope to entertain you again tomorrow. Till then, I'm Corey Evans saying good night, Jay.
Alright, thank you very much, Corey. That's Corey Evan. He has the entertainment report. And ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for joining us tonight. Stay tuned. The Exceptional Conservative Show is next with Pastor J. David Manning. They discuss race and faith on tonight's show, followed by a special edition of the Sackheads Radio Show, starting at 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific, right here on the SHR Media Network. For Corey Evan, I'm Jason Miller, saying so long from Los Angeles and San Diego, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Check us out on Facebook.com/The Evan-Miller Report, or you can tweet us at EM Radio Report. Good night, everybody.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.